All right, welcome to the Galen Eagle podcast. This is episode 2 of our 2023 series on educational technology. I'm Dr. David Aguilar, Associate Professor of Computer Science at Galen University, and your host for today. Joining me in this episode is Dr. Dorian Barrow, the Dean of Education at Galen, and he's an enthusiastic supporter of STEM education and research. And so we're here today to talk a bit about the state of educational technology in our country and how we can capitalize on our current opportunities in that area. So, Dr. Barrow, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very, 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 very much, Dr. David Aguilar. This is a passion of mine. We have been having this conversation for quite some time now, and
Yes.
it seems like it is gaining some traction now.
Yeah, it does. I'm quite excited about some of the developments that are taking place this year, both at Galen and in the country. So, let me ask a little bit about you. You're the Dean of Education here at Galen, so you're in charge of our education program. But you also have a significant amount of experience personally in the science field. So, can you tell us a bit about your educational journey so far?
Well, thank you. I am a science educator. I'm a science educator. In my whole life, I used to be a scientist, physical scientist, studying physics and chemistry. And I became attracted to science education um, a few years ago when I realized that in the country there was this gap between um, between the scientists and the students. The
Hmm.
scientists, the teachers, and the students. There was not the science educator to provide that link between the two so that the teacher can deliver science in the way it's intended to deliver science. I am at the heart of my perspective is trying to understand how people learn, how children learn, how adolescents learn, how young adults learn, and how older people learn. And I do that looking at it through the lens of science, how science have come into being and the significance of it and that type of thing. So my educational journey has been basically that I did my first degree in Canada in the physical sciences, and then I did a master's degree in the UK, again in the physical sciences, and then I ended up doing my PhD in the United States, in the states of Florida, at Florida State University. And that is where I really embraced and got involved deeply in science education. At the time, people like Gagne was there, um, Robert Gagne, one of the very, very significant others in science, and people like Ken Tobin, Alejandro Gallard, and a host of other people were there that I immersed myself in terms of a learning community, and I have been doing that ever since.
All right, that's pretty exciting. So, as I said, I think this is going to be a really interesting year for science education in Belize and here at Galen University as well. In fact, we are anticipating the opening of a laboratory here at Galen that focuses on robotics and artificial intelligence. So, hoping that's going to come online sometime this year. Have you given any thought to some of the activities that we can facilitate with this new set of resources and how we can, as you say, take the science kind of into the classroom to bridge that gap in communication between the scientists doing research and the students who are learning?
Well, Dr. Aguilar, I'm particularly glad that you brought that up. This has been a project that me and you and a couple others here, including our provost, have been working on for years. We have finally um, gotten some resources allocated to do the project, right? And what we have decided that we're going to do is to establish a facility that will be focusing on STEM, algorithms. The but that's just the physical structure. The organizational structure and the curriculum of
Hmm.
the center is going to be focusing on the digital technology standards. what we want to do is to ensure, first and foremost, that our Galen students, especially our teachers, right, have been able to acquire the digital technology standards. And by that
Right.
I mean they need to have competencies in technology operation and concepts. They need to be moving towards becoming digital citizens. They need to be able to not just be able to operate the computer, but to use the computer, right, to facilitate their creativity and innovation. They need to be able to communicate effectively and collaborate using the digital technology. They need to be able to do research and develop information fluency via the digital technology.
Yeah, that's a big
And,
focus of Galen right
and
now.
most importantly, Dr.
Sure.
Aguilar, as you know, it's developing this critical thinking. It's developing these problem solving skills, and be a lot more committed to this idea of data driven decision making. So the center is going to be focusing on on that, providing that kind of support internally to our students, so that when the Galen student transition to the world of work, they will have these distinct capabilities, including our teachers. So when that they transition to schools, right, they'll be able to pick up from where these mega projects have left off, so that they can become sustainable. But the other important target of it is outreach. Outreach. I know that in the earlys, when you started at Galen, you used to spend your summers doing workshops,
Code camps for
doing kind of
children.
summer
Yeah.
school activities
Right.
with kids, trying to build these same set of competences. So a lot of the resources of that center is going to be invested in outreach. Right now, I'm in communication with one of my old students, now professor at a university in New York, Dr. Naomi Witt, and she
Okay.
has a wonderful STEM education program at her university, and she has agreed to work with us, and do some project activities in the summer. Her approach to STEM is that you have STEM agriculture, so
Hmm.
it's focusing on agriculture using the framework and the premises of STEM. Or you have she even have one called STEM cycling, where even the riding of a bicycle and how you go about caring for your bicycle is done within the framework of STEM.
Oh,
So
that's
these are the
interesting.
kinds of things that the center is going to be doing. Right now, in addition to that, right, it's also an AI center. We're going to be developing coding capacity, and hopefully we'll be able to provide that kind of service to the business community and other institutions who need those kinds of service once we have those capacities in place.
That's interesting. And yeah, you mentioned those summer camps I used to do with the younger children in the area. We could certainly use a laboratory as a platform for that because we used to have to get space in another institution. I think we did it at Sacred Heart a couple times in San Ignacio. So having our own facilities to do something like that in would be very good, very useful, I think. In terms of the actual physical structure, you were one of the driving factors in securing agreement from the administration to do that. I wasn't actually present at that initial meeting where that decision was made. So I'm kind of curious, just personally, how that decision came about. Who floated the idea first, and how did you get agreement on that?
Well, David, you weren't there physically, but you were there in spirit. You have been a part of this project from the beginning, because it is based on your expertise, which is computer science and computer science engineering. Essentially, this thing started a couple of years ago. It must have been in 2018 or so, when we got together and we decided that we wanted to do a summer camp for kids, um, with an emphasis on robotics. We wanted to introduce this concept of robotics to primary and secondary school
Right.
kids um, at that particular time. That was long before it became popular with some of the other institutions. We know that just recently one of the institutions went to Europe to some competition and they actually won gold.
Mm.
We were thinking about it from then. We had written up a project, you remember,
Yes.
and the big problem was with securing funding. Was
Right.
procuring funding. Nobody nobody embraced the whole package, right? And what was happening with the help of our provost, we were getting parts of it from here, right? This institution would say that they would give us two computers. This other institution would say that they would give us one of the kits, one of the robotic kits,
Right.
and it was kind of that kind of scattering, and it would take a long time to really get organized and get off the ground. So we started the discussion internally, asking ourselves, what if we made some investment in this, right? And in what way could this be tied in to some of the other things that we do, right? Most of the things that we do focuses on students and the education of students. How could we tie in something like this into that, right? Also, there is an increasing need for STEM related skills in the workplace, increasing
Yes.
need for that. And so we were able to convince our provost, first of all, right? Who in a way had always been convinced, but
Yeah, I imagine that was the easy part, right?
she has a lot of other things to do. And then we together decided to approach the chairman of the board of directors,
Okay.
um, and we were able to sell him this idea of making an investment in this center. Of course, he is very astute and he has a business um, mind and a business orientation, but he's also very passionate about technology,
Yeah.
especially applied technology. Um, as a matter of fact, he have even sort of toyed around with it on his own, and he has agreed to, as soon as the center is established, he's going to be donating to the center all the equipment that he have, all the engineering equipment that he has that could support some of the activities, that could support some of the activities of the center. So the key thing was in us getting a clear consolidated vision from within, right? So yourself, myself, Dr. Eard, and then some of the other members of faculty that they, convincing them as to what is in it for them as a faculty, that we were able to eventually approach the the chairman of the board of directors, and he agreed to make the investment. So anytime now the construction should start, right?
Hmm.
We have put together a couple provisional lists of equipments that we're gonna be having.
Right.
Of course, it includes things like um, computers, smart boards, three-dimensional printers. It includes things like robotic sets and that kind of thing, and a host of other things, because we want to also make this a research-based facility, right? A research-based facility. And we are investing in some of the fundamental equipment that you need to carry out any kind of research. carrying it out in a kind of research. For example, research in biodiversity, right?
Right.
Research in pharmacognosy, um, and research in things like food processing and those kinds of things.
Yeah, the possibilities certainly seem wide open with the equipment list that you've mentioned there. I've seen some of the listing before, and I'm really looking forward to it. Um, it seems that there's quite a lot we could do with that, and certainly translating it into practical classroom activities, I think, will be very instructional for students as well.
Yes, that is one of the main things about having a facility like this. I don't know. Well, it's an unfair comment to you, but I am really happy that I have the opportunity to live in virtual reality, to live in virtual space. Um, but for me, that can never ever replace the real touching, feeling, and smelling and manipulating of things.
No, I understand that.
So I think that a facility like this will be able to complement that, right?
Sure.
Because we can't just go back to the old days and only do that, right? We have to
Right.
find ways in which we can integrate the technology to drive that process, right?
Sure.
Um,
For
and
example, you mentioned that we're going to be getting some 3D printers. So I teach a course in computer graphics where we design three-dimensional models. And the software that we use can be exported to a model for printing in 3D. And so we could have our students design something on the computer and then hold it in their hands a few minutes later.
yes, that's the
And
kind of
that's
thing that we want to do.
and that's really exciting, I think, and it will be for them as well. So, as you said, you and I have been talking about this STEM education for a very long time. And pretty much everyone that we've spoken with has been in agreement that this needs to start early. Because by the time a student gets to high school or even worse to college, they already have a pretty firm idea of what they want to do with the rest of their lives. And so for them, very often, the sciences are not really seen as a primary early consideration for a viable career field. But I think that there are certainly some things that we can do to encourage them to think about science as a viable career option. Um, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are about some practical steps that we can take to ensure that this isn't just talk, but something that becomes a real plan of action for us that translates into students who are seeing science as a career in the future.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that question, David. I know that that has been an issue with you. It's good to talk about it, but you
Yeah.
want that to be translated into something, into action,
Yeah, I
into
want to see
action,
some young
right?
Belizeans who say, I want to do this, I want to build this, I
I
want to be an engineer,
That is correct. That is correct. So what the idea of STEM is, as you know, is essentially to use the 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 computer science technology, the artificial intelligence algorithm, the engineering problem solving skills, the scientific methods, and the mathematical thinking and logic to help to form a new generation of thinkers of Belize, of a new generation of Belizeans who will want to move into these kinds of areas.
Hmm.
These kinds of areas, the areas having to do with science, the areas having to do with technology, the areas having to do with engineering, the areas having to do with mathematics. And most importantly, who are going to be applying these fundamental principles, right, of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics into whatever they do, into whatever they do. So the idea here is to try and help with the facilitation of this paradigm shift that needs to be made in this country, needs to be
Right.
made in this country. And we really have to start as early as we possibly can with our youngest citizens. All right, youngest citizens. So we need to start with providing opportunities for them to be able to operate in this world, operate in this world where they look at a computer as more than just something to play games on, or something to that you get on a keyboard and punch and punching letters to to write an essay or something like that. That the computer then becomes a tool
Hmm.
that will facilitate their um, um, their innovation and and their creativity in in generating new products, generating better quality products, right? Better quality products. It it has to be sold, David, right? It has to be sold as both we want more people to become scientists. We want more people to become technologists. We want more people to become engineers. We want more people to become mathematics. But at the same time, it needs to be sold as we want everybody in the country, or as many people in the country as possible, to have some of these skills and capabilities so that they can take this to whatever it is that they do. This is the paradigm shift that we are trying to foster through a center, through a center like this. And we really have to begin as early as possible, right? And we have to work with some of the other level. So reaching out to the community will become critical, right? Reaching out to secondary schools, even tertiary level institutions, in terms of getting this message across and helping them to organize their curriculum where this becomes an option. What I
Okay.
really want to see, David, is that just like how now in high school we have that when you reach third form, you can choose, you have a choice of studying the arts, or you have a choice of studying business, or you have a choice of studying the sciences but separately, right? I want to see there now being a choice where you could study STEM and STEM related disciplines, right? Where that is a choice that you can pursue from high school, and where people feel sufficiently competent to be able to choose that area, this integrated approach to looking at the world through these four disciplines.
Yeah, that's interesting. So changing the curriculums at the lower levels of education, I think there's a lot of potential there for sure. Yeah. So, yeah, you're the dean of education here at Gale, and you're an educator of educators. And so, I'm really curious about your perspective regarding the strengths and weaknesses, or the strengths and the opportunities, I guess, regarding Belize's current engagement with STEM in the classroom. And maybe we could talk about that from the kind of current curriculum levels and some specific things you'd like to see changed, or just generally speaking, what we could be doing better and what we're doing right about STEM education in the classroom now at the current time.
Well, that's a very very important question, because if the teachers in our system are not on board, if they are not in tuned,
Right. Yeah.
if they haven't bought into this idea, right, the whole process is going to be more difficult for the children to reach where we want them to reach.
Hmm.
So, as the dean of the Faculty of Education here at Galen, um, we have already begun this whole process of curriculum integration, right? We need to infuse STEM related thinking to more of our teacher education courses. We
Okay.
need to begin to offer our teachers, right, how to approach teaching from that perspective. It's a very different kind of teaching. It's a very different kind of teaching than we used to do in the past,
Right.
where the emphasis was on content knowledge, what on content knowledge only. Our approach is what we call a TVOC approach, right? Where we are concentrating on the technology infusion into the content knowledge along with the pedagogy, along with the pedagogy. So that is where we are starting as far as the teachers is concerned. Now, a lot of the teachers who are currently in the system, right, have not been exposed to that approach to education.
Okay.
And so a lot of the things that we will be doing is to have professional development sessions for as many of the teachers as we possibly can, um, to be exposed to this methodology. It means working a lot closely with the Ministry of Education, because they do require that for teachers to maintain their license, they have to do a certain amount of professional development hours.
Okay.
And the professional development activities, PD activities like this, once they are counted as professional development hours, then we will be able to get a lot more of our teachers wanting to access them. So it's providing support at that particular level. But in addition to that, we have to also develop a community with the school leaders, with the
Hmm.
school leaders. And one of the ways that we're doing that here at Galen is through our education leadership program. Because if the principal and the vice principal and the department heads are not on board with this thing, then again, the challenges to the teachers and the students will be exacerbated. So we are also working at educating and sensitizing the school leaders with the importance of this approach, right? The importance of this choice area for our students. So that is the way how we are going to be engaged in the future as we move forward.
All right. Sounds like there are lots of kind of natural fits in terms of the way that, like you said, if they have to do these professional development hours anyway, provide to them the content that allows them to be familiar with and capable of utilizing and teaching this technology. I think that's really good. In our first episode, the last session of this podcast, I interviewed Mr. David Alfaro from our new northern partner at SEMJC. And I asked for his perspective on this emerging AI issue, Chat GPT AI, the automatic generation of art and literature. Everybody's talking about AI these days. And of course, we need to weigh in on how this impacts the way that students do their research, how they write their assignments, what the new rules are relating to cheating and plagiarism. So there's quite a wide range of areas where AI touches. What are your thoughts on this topic? Is it something that your students are talking about? Is it something that you address with your students?
Well, it's an issue. It's an issue that we have not only here at Galen, but throughout our education system. This whole
Sure.
issue of what the literature calls similarities to the student work and prior published work. Um,
Hmm.
some people call it, as you know, plagiarism, the extent to which students borrow ideas, borrow sometimes whole chunks of work from elsewhere and don't even acknowledge it. Don't even acknowledge it. And it has become increasingly challenging for teachers to detect this. We have had some traditional tools to detect it, like check. We had, you have Grammarly, you had Turnitin, some
Turn it,
traditional
yeah.
tools to to check for us certain levels of plagiarism. But then comes this new wave, that is characterized, I guess, by Chat GPT, um, where they can go to an AI facility, just ask the AI facility a question,
Hmm.
and the AI facility goes and do the work for them and produce for them what they want.
Right.
So if they want the answer to an essay, or if they want to, if the assignment is for them to write a short story, if the assignment is for them to write a poem, or if the assignment is for them to take a position on, let's say, technology use in Belize, with software, like ChatGPT, they could just ask them and they would do it for them. So this has, and the thing about it is that the traditional tools that we have used to try and check for plagiarism, right, have been unable, or had been to detect whether or not a student's work was done through this mechanism. So we had a big, you will recall, we had a big internal discussion about that, as to what should be our approach,
Hmm.
because this was an issue that was facing higher education, especially all over the world, all
Right.
over the world. ChatGPT was one of the first software to, within a matter of days, had more than 100 million subscribers all over the world, right? And there were a lot of opinions being shared on the approaches that institutions were taking to this problem. Um, and one of the approach that really impacted me was the approach that a small university in Mississippi was doing, right? Instead of them treating it in a hostile way, right? Where they were telling the students, well, if you use this IT technology, you will be punished. Their approach was to
Hmm.
acknowledge the existence of this technology, and to see how they can adjust their teaching so that integrated integrated the AI technology into what they were doing, so that students were no longer afraid of using the technology. They knew that they could admit using it, but they would have to do so within a particular agreed upon framework.
Right.
Within a particular agreed upon framework. Um, for example, they might ask them to read a book, right? Generate a thesis, having read the book, and get ChatGPT to do a book review for you, and see how the book review that Chat does compares. In other words, they've begun to use it as a teaching tool,
Right.
as a thinking tool, and as a resource that students can use to facilitate their learning. That is my orientation. And I was delighted when our provost decided that that would be the approach she wanted here at Galen, where we find ways in which we can integrate the technology into our teaching, right?
Sure.
Um, of course, as you know, that is easier said than done, because
Right.
We want to, at the end of the day, um, get these students to learn how to think, to learn how to write, to learn how to argue. Um, and if this tool is not helping them to do that, if they become dependent on this tool, right? I see a lot of kids can't do mathematics
Hmm.
because they're so dependent on the calculator.
Right.
If this tool becomes that kind of thing, then we really and truly have to take other positions. And that, for us to be able to make that kind of decision, one of the things that we have to do is to monitor very carefully what we are currently doing and see if it is producing the kind of effects that we want it to produce. If it's helping us to produce more uniquely educated Galen branded students, right?
Yeah.
And that requires a certain amount of investment by way of research, by way of research. And I am delighted that we have a research office
We do,
and
right?
they have just sent out a call for papers. I'm hoping they have a small research grant now to offer. I'm hoping that some of my colleagues is going to be focusing on that particular area um, where we are able to document what is happening and what has been the results of what is happening.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we're data driven ourselves when it comes to the decisions we make.
That is correct.
Thank you. That was a really thoughtful and I think thorough answer. Um, and that's been my concern as well. We want to welcome the new tools, but at the same time we want to make sure our students are not losing anything in terms of these traditional skills. But this is one of the things that excites me about education done right. Lots of places say that they're preparing their students for the real world, but when the real world changes, they don't want to change what they're doing, and so they're not really keeping up with the times. Here at Galen, I think we are doing that. And yeah, I'd be interested in looking into some of that monitoring research as well, because there's a lot of information we can gather from the way that education is changing in response to these new tools that are coming out. So that's definitely, I think, something that we can look into for sure. So we've talked a little bit now in our time together about our goals, what we would like to see happen. Towards the furtherance of those goals, or in order to achieve those goals, who do you think we should focus in on in terms of uh, expanding our network, developing partners as a university? What institutions and organizations do you think we could reach out to for mutual support and development, especially in these technological aspects of education that are emerging?
David, that is the best question so far. You have been so thoughtful with this whole process, so I know that you're on top of it, right? First of all, we need to identify the the state, the government, as one of our strategic partners.
Hmm.
We need to hear what they want to do. We need to gain their confidence um, in our capacity to help them to achieve what they want to do, and also to advise them about what are some of the things that they might want to do that have been tried elsewhere and hasn't been successful, or that has been tried elsewhere and has been so expensive that it has to be abandoned, um, so that they have confidence in us as a partner, as a partner. Whenever they want work in a particular area done, of which we have the capacity, it means partnering with us. So that relationship, they have to become one of our main stakeholders. I think the other stakeholder critical must be the productive sector,
Okay.
the business sector, right? They are the that is the part of the society that absorbs all our graduates who don't become entrepreneurs themselves, right? And we have to be in touch with their needs. What is it that they want, right? What is it
Right.
that they want? We have this program or we have that program. All that is good and well, but how is that meeting their needs? What do we have to do to constantly sharpen, right, hone our programs so that our graduates have the kinds of skills and the kinds of competences, and most importantly, the kinds of dispositions that they want, the kinds of attitudes that they want,
Okay.
integrity, right? Honesty, this whole thing of frank and openness, the ability to effectively communicate, in addition to the particular technical skills that we want. So they, because they are the ones who hire our graduates, I think they are just a natural partner. And we have to listen to them. We have to listen to them. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to do everything that they say, right? But we certainly have to take what they say into consideration
Sure.
and
Yeah.
use it to keep our program current. The other community, the other sector that I think we really and truly have to have as stakeholders are other higher education institutions.
Okay.
We need to develop those horizontal linkages with institutions all over the world that are trying to facilitate the same kinds of things in their country and may
Mm.
have more experience than us, may have more capacity than us, may have more expertise than us. Um, that networking becomes very, very important. And one of the ways how an institution like us, like Galen, can build those kinds of capacity is through conferencing. Conferencing. All
Okay.
right. We need to provide more support for people to travel to conference,
Hmm.
but we also need to be a little bit more proactive and see if we can get sponsors to sponsor conferences that we would hold.
So we could be the hosts. Yeah.
So we could be the host, right? We cannot do those kinds of things on our own. We really and truly need sponsorship. The provost and myself was talking a couple of days ago where she was saying that for the 20th anniversary of Galen, she would want us to host an international conference.
Hmm.
And she was asking me, well, how do you feel about that? And I was saying to her that, oh, well, I think that that's a wonderful idea. And I, the, the sense that I get right now, where she would be able to get a considerable amount of funding from, is if we would have a conference on climate change education,
Okay.
right? There's a lot of climate change research going on, but I don't think that there is a sufficient emphasis on climate change education.
Education.
How do we educate the world on this whole issue of climate change and educate them in a meaningful kind of way where they can understand what is going on with that. And she's saying that, oh, well, what we're going to do is to get together and have a brain date and look at some of the other issues that people might want to, um, to, to present as conference opportunities. But she wants to have a conference. And I think that is one of the ways how we can bring scholars from institutions from all over the world at Galen to not only share their expertise, but also to develop the, some important linkages with Galen so that we know where to go to if we want the X, Y, and Z amount of expertise. And then the final grouping that we really and truly must become partner with are with
Okay.
communities in Belize, right? There are some communities in Belize that are really and truly at the margins, and they, there is no concerted effort to bring them from the periphery and move them towards the center, or closer to the center with regards to these kinds of activities, right? With regard to it. Because if we're going to be successful, right, it can't just be for the people in San Ignacio and Santa Elena and the people in
Hmm.
City and Belmopan. It also has to be for people who are in remote areas. The Mayan South, for example, there are 13 or 14 villages that are in some of the most remote parts of the country. In
Right.
some places, they can't even access the internet, right? Because the infrastructure is not there. We really and truly have to find ways to see how we can include as many of these communities as possible so that no community is left behind.
I think that's a really good set of partners that you've identified there. It's interesting. The first thing you mentioned was the inclusion of the government, of the ministry that deals with education technology, and you also talked about gathering in partners by way of conferencing. So it's kind of interesting that just this past Friday, you and I attended a conference in Belize City that was hosted by the ministry, right? The Ministry of Culture, Education, and Technology. And we spoke with them about their current project. They're implementing a project in our primary schools. I think they were talking about Standard 4 and Standard 5, where they're teaching students how to go
Going
from
up
being users of
podcast
the
with
technology
David
to
Aguilera.
creators. I think they're working with a partner institution called code.org.
I told
And
I
so
told him who was that.
they're teaching students how to not just use computers as passive consumers, but also writing programs, developing applications, and manipulating electronic media. And so that's the project that the government is currently engaged in. What were your thoughts on that conference and that project that they're doing right now?
Boy, I was impressed. I was really and truly blown away by that coding, by that coding Caribbean project. That that's that we were invited to this
Hmm.
multi stakeholder this discourse on this particular project. Essentially, what the project is about, as you know, is to begin the process of introducing our primary school students to computers, not just as an entertainment tool
Hmm.
or not just as a functional operational tool, but as a tool that could be used to enhance their creativity and
Right.
their innovationness. Um, and it's predicated on the assumption that we need to get them as early as possible. This particular, at the point where they're at, I think they're working with, as you pointed out, with standard 4 and standard 5
I
students,
think those are the two that they mentioned. Yeah.
right? In schools like St. Joseph in Belize City, there's a school that they mentioned that they're working with the SDA in. But all in all, they're working with 24 schools in the country right now, getting this program getting this program started. The CEO, Ms. Mejia, um, was saying that by the time the project ends in 2024, right, they want to have this in about 100 schools.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we ask her, well, what will happen after that? And then she's saying that, oh, well, to ensure the sustainability of such a project, they're going to be working very closely with institutions like Galen, with institutions like the University of Belize, right? So that they the program can continue in perpetuity. So Galen, for example, is going to be utilizing the curriculum, right? The curriculum of this Caribbean coding program in its summer outreach program, right? The curriculum is, according to the developers, is free and it's accessible. The Ministry of Education essentially will be the organization that controls access,
Right.
right? Um, but we will be having access to that, and we will be using that to reach out to some of the students that we would like to reach in that age cohort, um, so as to expand this effort. But at the same time, for us to develop capacity in how to use this so that when the project is over, we would be able to continue to support it as it becomes a countrywide activity.
Yeah. I like you. I was pretty impressed by it, and I hope that it does have the effect that they anticipate on it. And I was very happy to be invited to that conference because, I think that you and I have both said that this ministry that deals with technology, um, I think it needs to be a bit more public facing in terms of what it's been up to for the past few years, or maybe we've just kind of missed it. I mean, you and I are educators. Your background is in science. My specialty is in computer science. But we haven't had a lot of communication in the past with this ministry. As you said, we need to be seen of as being helpers. We need to be there to kind of facilitate the other institutions in terms of what their goals are as well. And it seems like this would be a natural partnership for Galen to help with the ministry in terms of their goals and our goals as well. And to that end, at the end of the conference, you and I spoke with one of the organizers of the conference, and we invited her to be a guest on an upcoming episode of this podcast. And she said that she'd be willing to do that. So, two questions for you. First of all, number one, would you be willing to co-host with me at that day when I interview her? And second of all, if you are, then since we have very limited time in these sessions, what do you think our main focus should be? Obviously, we have a lot to talk about, but how can we make the best use of that time?
Well, the answer, of course, to that, David, is yes. I was delighted when you were able to convince her to to um, to come on your show or to come on your podcast. Um, it's a Galen podcast, and this is one of the things that we want to do, is to work very closely with the Ministry of Education.
Right.
Um, she is the Science and Technology Officer in the Ministry of Education. She is the technical person that is driving this whole process. So I think us having a conversation with her, right? Us finding out what exactly are they doing, what are some of the challenges that they're having, right?
Hmm.
What are some of the things that they're doing well? What are some of the ways that they want us to help,
Right.
right? Very, very, very clear, so that it's not that they're they're going in one direction and we are pulling in another direction.
Yeah.
It's going to be a concerted effort, and us providing that kind of support. So I think that we need to focus on strategy, right?
Okay.
How are we going to be working together, right? What is the best possible ways given our limited resources and given their more extended resources in one sense, right? But limited in another because it's only she and I think one other person
Yeah,
working in
it's a
the unit,
two-person office,
right?
right?
It's a two-person office.
Yeah.
So how can we work together to get the job done to the benefit of both them and us, right? So that in the end, it is the Belizean people that are served, right? In the end, it is the capacity building that needs to take place is being taken place through a collaborative through a collaborative effort between them and us. So I think that that's a wonderful beginning,
Hmm.
right? That's a wonderful beginning. It's the first person from the Ministry of Education in a long time that I have known of that's going to be involved in a public discourse in this way with Galen. I mean, normally we invite the minister or the CEO to graduation and they're up there and speak. But this now is an interactive discussion.
Right.
What are you doing? What do you want us to do? And how can we do what you want us to do? How can we provide the kind of support that you need?
Excellent. Yes, I think we need to give them a platform where they can address the public in a way that's not super formal, but very, as you say, interactive. They can speak their mind. It's not like an education where they're delivering a speech. We're just having a conversation. And I think we can get into a lot of the details that way. So, anything that we can do to help the ministry to accomplish their goals, as you say, I'd be quite happy to help them with that. She also mentioned that she will be out of the country for very soon, so we need to get moving on that. So I'm thinking maybe in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully we can get that done very soon.
Yes, yes, Dr. Aguilar. As soon as you get that going, just let me know.
All
Right?
right, excellent. Okay, so we're almost out of time. Just one last question at the end here, a very general one, and you can answer this in any way that you like. What do you think the future looks like with regard to technology education in Belize? Is there a cause for optimism? Do things look positive? What are some of the dangers and pitfalls that we should be concerned about? So, very open question.
I
Just
I
yeah,
am an eternal optimist, but I'm particularly optimistic about this. And one of the source of my optimism has to do with the reality. Dr. Osman Martinez just recently completed a piece of research where he found that of all the people who are working in Belize, who have associate degrees, bachelor's degrees, or master's degrees, 84% of them have degrees in business
business, right?
administration. Now, what that tells me are two things. First of all, that the business administration curriculum is the most successful national curriculum we have. And we can't fault them for that. We can't fault the Catus for that. That their program is perceived as doable by a lot more people, as relevant by a lot more people.
Right.
I always tell her when I'm conversing with her is that I wish if I could get science education or STEM education to that level of attractiveness. But we have to use that as a model. What is it that they're doing, right, that has made business administration so effective, so attractive to people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what is it that we are not doing in these STEM career areas? Science. I mean, there's a kind of a stigma. I remember when I was going to school, it was only the eggheads, the smart ones who did science, right? Uh, who would become engineers or doctors, right? Who would become technologists. Um, and of course, you really have to be super, super smart to become a mathematician. Um, and these disciplines are like any other disciplines. They have their challenges, but they are human endeavors, right? They're human endeavors. Anybody, anybody can learn mathematics. Anybody can learn science. Anybody can become an engineer, right? Providing that you are allowed to and you're facilitated in going through the process of doing that, right?
Right.
Mathematics has a lot of rules that you have to learn. You have to learn how to add, you have to learn how to subtract, you have to learn how to divide, you have to learn how to multiply. And in addition to that, you have to learn to do a lot of other things. And if you don't learn these rules, then mathematics becomes increasingly more difficult, right? But the
Right.
same is true for any of the other disciplines. If you don't, if you don't learn the concepts, the concrete concepts or the defined concepts, if you can't differentiate, if you don't know the rules, you don't know the higher order rules, right? If you haven't acquired the motor skills, especially in things like engineering, right? Where you have to be able to execute things, have to be able to build a bridge, build
Right.
a house, design and build. Um, the if you don't acquire the skills, so to me, what we have to focus on is on convincing students of the usefulness of these disciplines, making it more attractive to them, and making it as relevant as possible. One of the things that I like about the STEM approach to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is that it's a project approach. It's
Yeah.
project after
Yeah.
project after project after project after project. You learn how to design, right? You learn how to work in teams,
Hmm.
right? You learn how to be patient, okay? You learn how to be sequential. Project after project, you learn how to present the project,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
so it is making sure that the target audience, the students, right, see this as something that they would want to do. That's something that could be useful to them. That it doesn't mean that they have to become an engineer, or as the guy at the presentation was saying, that one of his favorite student eventually became a fashion
Fashion
designer,
designer. Right. Yeah.
right?
But she used the skills she had
But
learned
she
in those
used
processes
the
and projects.
skills. She
Right.
used the skills in order to design her clothing.
Right.
Yes, Dr. Aguilar. Well, it has been a pleasure to talk to you. I know that we could go on and
Yeah.
on.
But
Uh,
these podcasts do have a time limit, so
yes, but they do have
um,
a time limit.
but yeah, thank you for joining me today, Dr. Barr. This has been really a fascinating conversation. I feel I learned a lot, and I feel like you, I'm optimistic, and I look forward to seeing what we as a university can do to help at least the national goals with regard to science, education, and technology. Um, so thank you once again for being here. I look forward to co-hosting with you in the very near future. Um,
Yes, just let me know, Dr. A, and I'll be there.
Excellent. All right. And I
All right.
also want to thank all of our viewers for spending some time with us today. Hopefully, I'll see you all again soon on our podcast, which airs every Thursday at 4 p.m. So have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.